And welcome back, folks. This is Anthony. Today I'm going to show you how to service your augers on an HSS model. Here's my 1332. It's practically new. It's got about 10 hours on it. And I'm going to service the augers. The owner left it outside all last winter, so I'm imagining there are going to be some problems. If you live in the rust states, the rust belt, up in Canada or northeast of the United States or the Midwest, where they use a lot of salt on the roads and everything, it's really important to do this, because what's going to happen over time is that your augers are going to get stuck on the auger gearbox shafts. I've shown this before on the HS models, how to do it. And you could have problems with your impeller. I've seen it all the time where the impeller won't come off, and because it's locked on there with rust and corrosion. So this little job, this little maintenance point is fairly easy. I believe anybody can do it. It just takes a little bit of patience. So let's get started here. I'll show you step by step. Okay, the first thing I do on the HSS models, you've got a shear pin down here on your impeller. So you got to remove that first. I put it in my trusty magnetic tray. I already loosened up everything in the interest of saving time, okay, folks? Now you got that loose. You got a bracket, so these two bolts have to come out. Let's take them out. Okay, these are 12 millimeter head, 12 millimeter nut. Like I've mentioned many times, most things on a Honda are 10 and 12. Now, a good way to tell if you're going to really need the service, and I really recommend doing this, even if the augers move freely. I took the shear pins out already. The shear pin goes in here to the auger. I already took them out. And you want to make sure that it spins freely. If you've got an HSS model, you've had it for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years or whatever. Up in Canada, they came out earlier. And in the United States, they came out in 2015. This could be locked on, see? And if you don't, if it's locked on there, the shear pin's not going to do any good, and you could end up breaking the shaft on your auger gearbox. So I already checked mine, but and it turns freely. There's no resistance or anything. If it's locked up, you could take a long 2x4 or whatever, or some kind of long pry bar or something, and try to unlock it that way if you didn't want to take the augers out, okay? But we're taking them out today to show you how to do it. So I got the shear pins out. I got the auger gearbox bracket off. You got a boss pin. You got a pin down here that needs to come off. If you want to take the impeller off. And I want to take the impeller off because I want to look at the auger pulley wheel shaft and see what kind of condition it's in. And then you've got a hardware bolt up here that needs to come off. So what I'm going to do first is take this out. I'm going to use a rubber mallet because I don't want to damage the bolt. Okay, you can also use a brass hammer so you don't damage the end of the bolt. But I try using a rubber mallet first, because otherwise you're not going to get the nut back on. Okay, got that done. This is held on with a cotter pin, and if you take it all apart, I suggest you take the augers out first. So what you do, you have to take these side nuts off. You people that have been around for a while, you remember my witch from last Halloween? She's back up. You might hear her laughing in the background. Okay? So, okay, I got those sides out. I want to double check to make sure I did everything right. Okay, I got the bolts out, released the bolts, took the bolts off for the bracket. You know, this is your support bracket. And removed the hardware bolt right here. I should be able to pull it out now. Let's see if we can pull it out. I don't want to lose this spacer. This is the difference between the HS models. And you got your bearing holder right here, and you got a spacer that goes in here on both sides. Honda puts a lot of grease on them, which is good. I get the spacer out on both sides. Okay, now you got the bearing holder that just doesn't come out like on the older models. It's locked in with the bolt. Let's take that off. And then the bearing holder comes out like so, and then here's your bearing. Now you can take a pick and pull that rubber cover off the bearing and see if it needs grease. My machine's practically new, so I checked the race. I made sure it wasn't going in and out. There was no play. It turns freely, so the bearings is pretty good. Okay, so we set that aside. Now, like I've said many times, folks, when you're doing a repair for the first time, you don't have a heck of a lot of experience, take pictures, okay? That will save you a lot of frustration if you forget how things get put back together. I already took the spacer out here. This is a 12mm head, so you can use your socket for that, and then pull this out. Now when I pulled mine out, these were oiled, so that's kind of nice. It has oil on them, or light grease. You could put anti-seize grease in here if you wanted to, and so nothing. And I do the same thing with all the bolts too. I put anti-seize grease in all the threads and all the bolts, because you never know when next time you have to take this apart. It might be 10 years, might be 15 years, might be 20 years from now, and you don't want anything locked up. Okay, so let's set these aside. Here's your augers. We'll set these aside. I want to take the impeller out. Now you've got a pin in here that's held on with a cotter pin. Honda calls it a split pin, cotter pin. I already took it out. Let me think. It's easier for me. It was easier for me to take the augers out first, so I had plenty of room to take the cotter pin out. Now you can use a small screwdriver, or you can use this is called a cotter pin removal tool. You would put that in the opening of the cotter pin, and then you would bang on this end, and it straightens out the cotter pin and pushes it out. It makes life a lot easier. I can't remember how much I paid for this. I don't know, $5 or $6. You can use a very small screwdriver to do the same thing. So you want to take this bolt out. It's not a bolt. It's a pin. It's kind of like a boss pin. So set that aside in my trusty magnetic tray. Okay, now it's two pieces actually. It's not like the old impellers on the HS models where this is one piece. It's two pieces. So that comes out. See, this is where the hole is where the shear pin was, okay? By the way, you should have a couple extra, couple extra shear pins, and on your auger shear pins, you should have 4 or 5 extras. I always recommend that. Now, impeller will pull out. You got this lip here on the HSS models. You got this lip here. I actually do not know what it's for. If anybody knows, please post in the comments. I like to learn something new too. So you want to make sure your fins are free of this lip. Let's see if it'll pull out. Okay, it pulls out nicely. Now when I pulled this out this morning, this was dry as a bone, which is not good. I don't think that's good at all, because 10 years from now, a bunch of rust and corrosion get in there and lock it up. So I put some copper anti-seize grease. I like copper anti-seize. It's really, really thin, very, very good anti-seize grease. And I like using a lot of it. I use it everywhere. And what I do with these shafts, I clean them out too. You can clean them out. You can spray some lubricant in there, and then you can use either use a hand brush, or wire brush, or I use this drill, and I'll put it in there and clean out the shafts. And I'll do the same thing. Hold on. I'll clean them out pretty thoroughly. And I'll do the same thing with the augers too. And then I'll put some anti-seize grease in here. You see, I put anti-seize grease on the mating surfaces because, like I said before, a bunch of rust and corrosion can lock that sucker up. So I put some anti-seize grease on this. Now I can put my impeller back in. Okay. Then I can put this back on. It's nice and smooth operation now. And then I can put my shear pin. It's a little shear pin. It's a little carriage type bolt where the head goes in this side first, and then your nut is on this side. So I can put that together. I put anti-seize grease in here too, so years from now it won't lock up on me. And now I can pull I already got the shear pins out, so I can pull the augers off. Okay, and you can do the same thing with these shafts. You can clean them out, rinse them with some penetrating oil, clean them out with a brush. If there's any rust in there, you want to clean them out really well on both sides, and then you can put some anti-seize grease in there with your little brush that comes with the anti-seize grease. Now if you got rust on these things, when I pulled mine out, it's only got 10 hours on it. It has grease on the shafts, so that was a good thing. Okay, this is called the lock boss, where your shear pins go. Here's your boss pin. You should have an extra one of these too, folks. It can shear off on you. You can have an extra one of those. See how it goes on? You got the pin, the washer, and a cotter pin. So if you have a lot of rust on here, of course you'd clean it up. Clean it up with a wire wheel on your drill, or with steel wool. Clean it up very nicely. Put some anti-seize grease on it. When I pulled this off, this actually had rust on it. You know, the guy left it outside all winter, so rust was already starting after one winter and 10 hours of use. So I cleaned all the rust off, put anti-seize grease on that too. Okay, like you can check your gear oil on this gearbox. You put it in on a level surface and pull this plug out, which is also the drain plug, and the gear oil comes up to the bottom of the drain plug. So if you tip it a little bit and oil starts coming out, that's good. If it doesn't come out on a level surface, or tipped over a little bit, then you're going to have to add some 80-90 weight gear oil. I believe that's what you need for the Honda. So once you get that all done, you've got your augers all cleaned up. You want to make sure you put your augers on correctly. The teeth or the serrations are pointed out. I've seen people put them on backwards, and then they're complaining about the snowblower not collecting snow. It's because the augers were put on backwards. Now I've seen that happen several times. So you want to make sure that the teeth are pointing out. You put your auger gearbox back in there. Put the augers back on. Put your bearing holders on there. Lock them in. And what I did when I put it all back together this morning, I put extra grease on these things, so they will pretty much stay inside the bearing holder. So you put the bearing holder back on, lock it in with the. You can lock it in with your bolt here on the auger. I'm trying to get it the other way around. How come it's not going? Okay, like that. That goes on your auger. Let's do this, because people are going to ask me, how do you put this back together? Take pictures if you need to. Okay. Oh, the bearing fell out. So let's put the bearing back in there. I'm trying to do this with one hand. All right, put this back on like that. Then it locks in. You lock it in with your bolt here, 12mm head. Tighten that up pretty good. And then your spacer your spacer that I just showed you goes in there. And what I did, I put extra grease on the spacer, and then the spacer will if you put a bunch of grease on it, then the spacer will stay in there. Okay, when you're trying to put the augers back in. All right, so there you go. And then once you get that all done, then you can put your augers back in, and put your boss pin in here first. Well, you can do that before you put the augers back on. I suggest it's a lot easier to put your boss pin after you put your shear pin in. You can what I do is I use a stubby screwdriver to line up the hole. Okay, can you see the hole? You want to line up the hole, and then you can line up the hole, and then you can start putting in the pin from the other side. And the same thing with your hardware bolt. I also use a straight pick. You can use a straight pick to line up the hole in the auger gearbox shaft. Okay, when you put the auger gearbox shaft back in here, and then you can pull this out a little bit and start your bolt, and then you tap it in with a rubber mallet or the brass hammer. Now it's just the opposite of how you took it out. I don't want to spend an extra. It's already been 21 minutes. I don't want to spend an extra 10 or 15 minutes showing how to put it back together. It's just the opposite of taking it off. And once you've got everything lined up and the bolts in there, do not tighten everything yet. Make sure everything's lined up. Put your bolts in here for your auger gearbox bracket. Your 2 bolts go in here for your bearing holders. Get everything lined up right with the bolts loose, and then start tightening up everything. Okay, once you get everything lined up right, then you can tighten up everything. So there you go, folks, on how to service your augers on an HSS 724-928 or 1332. It's going to save you an awful lot of problems down the road. I see it all the time. People do not do this maintenance point, and then they've got serious issues 10 years down the road, 15, 20 years down the road, or they'll break the auger gearbox shaft. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it helps you save money, and we will see you next time.